It's time to get real. Real situations and real solutions. It's time for relationship conversations with Dr. Linda Bing. Inspiring healthy communication, building strong connections, and helping you grow in love, one conversation at a time. Right here on Pittsburgh's DSEN, each Monday from 8 to 10 p.m. Here's Dr. Linda Bing.
Hello and welcome everyone. This is Relationship Conversations with Dr. Linda Bing on Pittsburgh's DSEN. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you had a fantastic weekend. This was Mother's Day weekend, of course. So let me say happy Mother's Day or happy belated Mother's Day to all of the mothers, the bonus moms, the surrogate moms, the step moms, the aunties who fill in the gap, whatever you do to help nurture other people. Thank you because it is appreciated. And I want to thank all of you for tuning in tonight as well. Whether this is your first time listening or you're a devoted listener, your participation is greatly appreciated. So thank you for being here. Next time, make sure when you come back, you bring a couple of friends along with you. And while you're here, your thoughts, your opinions, your comments, your questions, all of that is of value. So if you have any of that throughout the show, please call or text. The number to call, you already know, but it's 412 213 8995. And if you don't want your voice on the air, you can text. That number is 412 218 3888. So get in on the conversation with Relationship Conversations, all right? Now, our first conversation tonight is based on a pattern that's often rooted in a desire to create a better version of your partner rather than accepting them as they are. You know, we meet people sometimes, we see who they are, but we also see who we think they can be or who we'd like to make them become. And that tendency is sometimes referred to as fixer upper dating or being in a fixer upper marriage. You know, have you ever felt like somebody was trying to change you, fix you up, take you to another level, another version without asking, without your permission, many times without even your desire? Or maybe you were the one that happened to be pushing someone in a certain direction. Now, I've seen it happen on both sides. Men try to fix women, women try to fix men. But tonight, I have to say, ladies, I'm going to be on you a little bit harder because most of the time when I see it, it's a woman who's trying to make something else out of the man that she's involved with. So she sees who he is, but she sees his potential. And if he was just a little bit more, and you can fill in the blank. Sometimes if he was a little more polished or a little more educated, maybe if he had a little more ambition or he had a little more style, all of those things go into making fixer upper dating relationships or fixer upper marriages. So, our first topic tonight: do you view your mate as a partner or a project? It's a good question. Many of you probably never even thought about it, but do you see them as a partner? Are they your equal? Are they, quote, good enough for you? Are they on your level? Or do you see them as someone who has the potential to be on your level? But the reality is, this is real life, okay? This is not a DIY show on HGTV. You know, it's not like you can go in, do some renovations, remodel, etc., and now this person comes out of greater value on the other side. So much of the time we get disappointed in relationships because we think that we're going to change the person and make them a better version of who they are. And then when they never make it to that level that we have dreamed up inside our head, we become upset with that individual. But you knew who they were and what they were when you connected. So let's not do that. Let's try not to go off of possibilities or potential, but let's go off of proof. You know, who are they? How do they show up every day? So this whole thing about fixing, it happens for a number of different reasons. And, I'm going to take you through a few of them tonight. So one is sometimes people have a nurturing instinct and, they just feel like they need to nurture or mother. And so many times in relationships, men will sometimes have to say to women, you're not my mother. And we don't like to hear it, but it's a good indicator that you might be behaving in a way that makes him feel like you are being over the top nurturing so much that you're smothering him. Another reason why people sometimes get into these fixer upper relationships is because they have a desire for control. Now, controlling people don't always recognize that they're controlling. They don't see themselves as controlling. The average person is not going to step up and say, yeah, I'm a control freak. I like to control other people. Most people aren't going to say something like that. And some people think that if I'm not telling you what to do, then I'm not controlling. But there are a lot of different ways to control. And we may go deep into that on one show. You can passively, by what you don't say or what you don't do, shape someone else's behavior. I heard it said a long time ago and I held on to it. The person who is least in love controls the relationship. I think you should write that one down. The person who is least in love controls the relationship. And that's because the person who is least in love, they pull back. They're not trying to put a whole lot of effort into it. But the person who is more in love, they are pouring their all into it and they're working hard to get that person, that partner, to return the value. Give me as much as I'm giving you. Do for me what I'm doing for you. And so they're working and working and working and not getting a return on their investment. But anyway, like I said, that's a topic for another show. Another reason why people might get into trying to fix up other people is they have an unconscious need to feel needed. And so they feel as if I'm the one doing these things for you, helping you become more ambitious, helping you to dress better. When it goes in reverse and it's men towards women, sometimes it's I'm helping you to lose weight. I'm helping you to get in shape. All of those things, they sometimes come from this unconscious need to feel needed. So, regardless of the reason, this behavior pattern usually results in a one sided, unsustainable relationship. There's one person who's pushing and doing all the work, and somebody else who's sitting back or resisting. I'm not going to let you do this to me. But you can't sustain that. You can't push someone forever, and they're not going to sit there and take it forever. You may not see another side of them, they may still show up. But believe me, behind the scenes, it's a whole nother story. They are out there doing whatever they need to do to feel free because you're not allowing them the freedom to be who they are. Now, I'm not saying that they're necessarily doing anything that's illicit, but whatever it is that you keep pushing to change, they are going to go someplace where they don't have to abide by that, where they can just be who they are. So let's look at each one of these one at a time. And again, call me 412-213-8995 or text 412-218-3888. Let's go with the nurturing instincts first. So, the nurturing instinct often begins with a healthy expression of care. You start out doing things out of a true desire. Maybe you're someone who likes to buy presents, or someone who likes to cook or clean, or whatever the case might be. It usually starts coming from a place of care. And then it warps into this compulsive need to save someone or transform them. And really, what we're saying is, I want you to be more like me. Many times that's the way it plays out. I see myself being ambitious. I want you to be ambitious. I see myself as being financially successful. I want you to be financially successful. So we're trying to mold and shape them, and we think we're doing it for their own good. But anytime you are forcing something on someone, it's not going to work. No matter how good it might be for them, it just won't work. And the relationship can't withstand that. So it comes from a desire to be needed, where the nurturing individual finds purpose in managing and organizing and fixing. Some people do a lot of that naturally. They're always organizing the house, they're always rearranging things and fixing things, and it's just part of their DNA. And that's fine when you're talking about the house or the refrigerator or your desk, the office. But when it comes to another human being, it's not so good. Not so good at all. It makes life chaotic. And so the common name for it in women is the Florence Nightingale syndrome. But then when we look at it in men, it's that white knight syndrome. He comes riding in on that horse and makes everything better. So he comes in thinking that he is going to fix you, make you better, show you a whole new way, uplift you. And that's basically what it's based on. So you may have also heard it referred to as the savior complex or the messiah complex. They're all referring to pretty much the same pattern of behavior. Someone who feels as if they are on an elevated level and it's their purpose to get you to rise up to where they are. So the white knight has a need to fix or rescue others. There are some people, and again, I say this is one that we usually see more in men, the white knight syndrome. We see more in men than women. But that white knight feels like they're the rescuer. They look for damsels in distress. Oftentimes it's a pattern. Sometimes women will feel like, why is it that every man I meet needs to, and then you can fill in the blank with other things. Well, it's that's kind of your radar. Based on whatever's going on inside of you, you have this need to fix people. So you always look for somebody who needs to be fixed in your mind. Men sometimes love it when a woman needs help. They love that damsel in distress. And so the more that you ask for things, the more you show that you need them. If someone is experiencing the white knight syndrome, that's exactly his sweet spot. That's exactly where he wants to be. And a lot of times when we look to see where do these things come from, some of this starts in childhood. It can be a childhood trauma or some abandonment. So maybe he wasn't nurtured enough or nurtured by the right people as a child. And so he's constantly on that wheel. Sometimes it comes from low self-esteem. If he doesn't feel good about himself, in order to make himself feel good, he has to find someone who in his mind needs some fixing so that he can do this valuable thing and show that he is of value. The rescuer will occasionally neglect their own needs just to be the hero. And that is not healthy. It can lead to controlling dynamics, emotional burnout, and unsustainable relationships because nobody can be the hero all the time and in all situations. And sometimes it gets to a point where he's so busy being the hero that on occasion when he's not, now she's going to get upset because she's expecting you to do the hero, the rescue kind of thing that you always do. Or maybe it's in a situation where you weren't planning on rescuing her, but she needs to be rescued. And you feel like, nope, that's outside of my white knight responsibilities. I'm not doing that. So that's kind of what happens when people feel as if it's coming from a nurturing place. Like I said, you can be nurturing and it starts out that way. But over time, if it develops into this obsession where you've got to keep fixing and rescuing and saving, then you might either be suffering from the Florence Nightingale syndrome, the white knight syndrome. And sometimes it's the white knight who actually feels controlled, as if their partner is too needy, when in reality, it's the knight that has taken on the mindset of feeling that they are required to take charge or things will just fall apart without them. So I'm sure you don't have any warped nurturing instincts, but maybe you know someone who does. So tell us about it. Or better yet, tell them to tune in. This might help fix the problem. But share your thoughts because we'd love to hear it. So, how do you overcome something like this? Well, one, you have to recognize the pattern. You have to acknowledge that this is a behavior pattern that you're in. And one of the things that will help is looking back at some of your past relationships. How did you handle them? Were you always in a position where you felt like you were having to mold or shape someone or help elevate them, put some fire under them to give them more ambition? If you see a pattern like that, it's not so much that all men need that or all women need that. It's that you have a need to fix people. And so you're always finding people who need to be fixed. So first you have to recognize the pattern and acknowledge that you do it. Then you need to set some boundaries. Focus on your own life and stop taking responsibility for your partner's life. Stop taking responsibility for their emotions, their decisions, all of that, especially if they're not asking you to do it. And in some cases, I know you may not want to hear this one, but in some cases, you really do need to seek some sort of therapy. Therapy doesn't mean that you're crazy. Therapy doesn't mean that you're broken or something's wrong with you. If you have a pain in your body, you have no problem going to a doctor. If you can't see well, you have no problem wearing glasses. But when your behavior is a little off, we take offense at that. We don't want to go and talk to someone to see if they can help get us back in alignment. I say to people all the time, not everyone needs counseling, but everyone can benefit from counseling. So I don't care how good you are, how good your relationships are, how well aligned your life is, there's always in all of us room for improvement. And if you're of the mindset of constantly growing, then just think of it as another part of the growth process. And if you're someone who rescues, isn't it kind of hypocritical that you want to step in and fix somebody else's life, but you won't go sit with a counselor or a therapist and help them fix your life? Where's the balance in that? If you can fix, then you can be fixed. So that's for the person who comes at this from a nurturing standpoint. Then there are the people I told you who have a desire for control. And a desire for control in fixer upper type dating often comes from anxiety or low self worth. The person doing the fixing tries to renovate the other person into an ideal image so that they create this false sense of security. So, for example, maybe a woman feels like she would feel more secure financially if her partner made more money. So usually on somewhat of an unconscious level, she's moving him, trying to get him to get better jobs. She might say, hey, there's an opening over here for XYZ, or what does it take to get promoted on your job? Or when's the last time you had a raise? Because she has a need to feel more financially secure, she's moving him to step into the role that will make her feel more mature, more secure. Or it could be a situation like maybe from a physical safety standpoint, whether she experienced some trauma in the past or not. Maybe she has, but maybe it's just the perception she has that in order to feel protected by her mate, he needs to have a certain type of physique. So maybe she's encouraging him, lift some weights, go to the gym, slim down, bulk up, those kinds of things. Not that he needs to be that, but in order for her to feel physically secure, like he really is the protector that she wants him to be, she might be pushing ever so gently in that direction to get him to do those things. And it comes from a desire to be in control. The fixer in that case believes that their partner's life is chaotic or that the partner has bad habits. So here they come swooping in to make things better or get them right. And just because it's not being done your way or the way you would like to see it doesn't mean that it's bad or it's wrong. It's just different. So sometimes that fixing, it happens on a subconscious level. We're not even aware of the fact that it's going on. And the fixer, they might be someone where they're not telling you what to do, but they might be well, maybe say it this way, they might not be telling you what not to do, but by emphasizing things that you should do, I mean, it's really just two sides of the same coin. So maybe it's them telling you, you really should get out and walk more, or you really should not be eating those chips or that ice cream or whatever the case might be. Maybe you should think about not spending so much money. Those kinds of things. It's a type of control. It's just more subtle. So how do you overcome this one? Educate yourself and recognize the pattern because there are some good self-help books out there to assist you. And yes, I do push the self-help, the therapy, all of that, not only because that's my background, but because I know it works. And part of the reason that I know it works, I told you I'm pretty transparent on this show. I read lots of self help books. I've done counseling. I enjoy counseling, to be honest with you. Sometimes the process is painful, but when you know that you're going to come through on the other side so much better, so much stronger, so much more secure, why would you not want to be your best you? So I know that I can always benefit in some area of life by going to counseling. And then you need to practice self care. Fixers often neglect their own needs. So, what are you doing for you? How are you enhancing your own life? And maybe you would not put as much energy into someone else if you felt better about who you are. So, maybe instead of trying to make him buff up so that he can be the protector, maybe you need to take some self defense classes or carry some pepper spray or do whatever to make yourself feel secure instead of putting all of that weight onto someone else. And then build a support system. Relationships with equals where support is mutual can help fixers experience the benefits of non fixing relationships because fixing can wear you out. It's tiring. So why would you always want to be in that position? Don't you want to just be carefree? Don't you want to sit back and maybe let somebody do something good for you for a change or just enjoy who you are and enjoy who they are? Something about that person other than their potential drew you to them. So focus on those things and just learn to be patient. Change doesn't happen overnight. So fixers need to be patient with themselves as they learn to adjust their behaviors and thought patterns. Be patient with yourself. And if you happen to have hooked up with someone who doesn't mind being fixed, then by all means, be patient with them as they go through that process. So, finally, another reason before we break, another reason that people sometimes get into fixer upper relationships is they have a need to feel needed. The way that they see their own lives as having purpose is because somebody else needs them. So this dynamic is usually sort of a subconscious attempt to heal something that happened to you in the past. There's some wound from childhood or past relationships where you learned that your value was tied to being useful rather than simply being present. Maybe somebody didn't value you for who you were. And if you weren't doing certain things for them, they didn't want to be bothered with you. That happens a lot in unhealthy relationships. So people get paired up, and one person, and many times it's the woman who feels like she doesn't add value because her partner is always putting her down, or her partner only appreciates her when she's doing something that he benefits from. Sometimes women get into those situations and they remain there because their self-esteem is so low, they don't see their own value. They don't recognize that you don't have to be this way. Life doesn't have to be this way. So when there's a past wound, whether it's from childhood or a relationship where you've learned that maybe you're not, in someone else's estimation, enough. I gave you a past relationship example. A childhood example might be if you grew up in an environment where people were always telling you that you were never going to amount to anything. Or maybe they told you that you were not smart enough, not pretty enough, not tall enough, whatever the case might be. You have no talent. What can you do? Those kinds of things, they weigh on your mind. And no matter how much you might try to release it or break free from that, it's still something that in the back of your mind on a subconscious level is fueling your thoughts and your behaviors. So you need to break away from that. Someone, somewhere, put that thought in your head, and you need a mindset shift. So the fixer might be drawn to partners who mirror some past dysfunction. And I know that sounds crazy. If the last relationship was dysfunctional, why would you want to find another relationship that mirrors that? And that's that whole thing that ties into abuse. And we will do a show on that at some point in time, the whole domestic abuse situation. But if the person who loves you, whether it was a spouse, a parent, a guardian, if the person who loves you abuses you, then at some point in time, those two things get fused together. And love feels like abuse because they always came packaged when you were in that relationship, when you were going through childhood, adolescence, whatever. So if the person who loved you the most, let's say it's as a child and it was your mom or your dad, they love you, but part of them loving you is putting hands on you, then unless somebody is putting hands on you or threatening to do so or just giving you a hard time, you feel like they don't love you. And that's because that's what love looks like to you because that's the way you're used to experiencing it. So until that person develops enough self-esteem to know that they are worth more than that and they get the strength to leave a relationship like that, certainly as a child you might be stuck unless there's some adult that you can share that with and they can step in and intervene. But certainly as mature adults, when we're in relationships that don't feel good, we need to get out of those relationships. So um, other examples might be if you feel like you're rejected. If you might feel your partner just needs some space. Maybe they want some self care, some me time, but you feel like it's a rejection. That might be an indicator to you that you've got this unconscious need to feel needed. You need for them to want to be around you so that you can feel like your life has purpose. Or maybe it's a tendency to shut down in conflict because you might have grown up in a household where, anger felt dangerous. When somebody got angry, there were bad things that were going to happen after that. Or maybe feelings, good emotions were never expressed. So you don't really know how to give good emotions or how to receive good emotions because there was never any modeling of that. That might lead you in some ways to have an unconscious need to feel needed. And then picking fights. Sometimes people pick fights when things are going too good. That when there's too much peace, they just need to step in and shake it up a little bit because it's almost like a test. Are you willing to fight for me? How hard are you going to work for this relationship? Because if you don't fight for me, if you don't fight with me, if you don't work hard for this, then you might not love me. So those are just some additional examples. And so it's time for a break. But before we go, we started a little bit late. So we're just a little bit, The schedule's a little bit off, but here are a few ways. I want to give you a few ways that couples can begin to make the unconscious conscious. So, in other words, maybe this pattern is happening, but you're not even aware of it, or until we talked about it tonight, you weren't aware of it. And so, in order to bring to your level of consciousness, because you can't fix what you don't acknowledge. So, pause and reflect. When you feel a strong reaction coming, whether it's good or bad, though it's usually going to be bad, but when you feel that strong reaction coming, ask yourself, what does this remind me of? Try to identify other times when you felt that way and look for who was involved, where were you, what was going on at the time, and how did you respond and handle it before? Because chances are that's your default and you're going to kick into that pattern again. If it was not a healthy pattern, then you want to break that. And even as you're pausing and reflecting, you need to keep in mind that this is not that situation and this is not that person. So I have to approach this with a clean slate. You also work through this by using I language. We've talked about that before, and we will again whenever we talk about communication. But instead of blaming, speak from your own internal experience. So I notice I feel really small when we argue, or when you tell me a better way to get things done, I feel judged and unseen. You start out with things like that. So you're not going to say, you're so judgmental. But what you would say is, when you tell me better ways to get things done, I feel like I'm being judged. I feel like you're not seeing the value in what I'm doing. And that opens the door for some communication. And then get curious, not critical. So, what I mean by that is to give your partner the benefit of the doubt. Assume that there's a story behind the behavior and try to find out what the story is. Help make them feel safe to share the story. Keep in mind that it might require them to pause and reflect. So be patient. And when they share, be curious, ask questions, listen, reflect. Those are some of the things that help build the trust, make it a psychologically safe environment, and put them in a position where they will open up more. They're more likely to see what you see with respect to this isn't working. And over time, things might change. So that was a good look at what it means to treat your partner as a partner, not a project. And so next up, we're going to talk about loving your partner as a partner. And that's just a different kind of spin on it. So we're going to take a break and we'll be right back. That's going to be the topic when Relationship Conversations with Dr. Linda Bing returns. See you in a minute.
Further than Soul Pit Media, with our award-winning print, internet, podcast, and Soul Pit television options, we can help your business get to that next level. For more information, contact Craig Dawson at 412-407-7685. That's 412-407-7685. And let Soul Pit Media take you to that next level.
Business owners thinking about back-to-school promotions and replacing summer flavors with pumpkin? What about your taxes? Reduce your stress and tax liabilities by planning for tax time now with Cameron Professional Services Group. CPSG takes your goals, values, and visions to create a custom tax plan catered specifically to your business. We work closely with you to ensure that as your business grows and goals shift, so will your custom plan. Located in the Hill District in Pittsburgh, PA, CPSG is a CPA and consultant firm, providing services in accounting, auditing, tax planning and preparation, community development, and operational management. Call Cameron Professional Services Group today at 412-251-0607.
Have you had the Beat by Niche experience? Beat by Niche is one of the top makeup artists in the city of Pittsburgh. She's touched the face of Cardi B, Love and Hip Hop personalities, and various Steeler wives. If you have not sat in her chair, what are you waiting for? Visit beatbyniche.com to schedule your special makeover for all occasions: weddings, graduations, proms, photo ops, and more. Visit beatbyniche.com and experience the touch of excellence.
Love and happiness, yeah. Something that can make you do wrong, make you do right. Yeah.
Isn't that what it's all about? Love and happiness. That's all we want.
Love.
Everybody wants to be loved. That's all we're talking about. Love and happiness. And that's part of the conversation every Monday night. But tonight, we're talking about making your partner a project. So, welcome back to Relationship Conversations. I'm Dr. Linda Bing on Pittsburgh's DSEN. And I want to turn our attention a little bit. We talked about what it might feel like when you treat your partner as a project. And even though you might not be doing it intentionally, it's not your intent that is affecting them, it's the impact. So we have to be mindful of the impact. Instead of continuing to act that way, let's be intentional, but intentional with respect to loving our partners as partners, not seeing them as projects. So one way you can do that is by approaching it from a mutual growth standpoint. Personal growth in a relationship is a continuous, intentional process, and it involves improving yourself and nurturing the relationship at the same time. So you have to do what's good for you and what's good for the relationship. Do what's good for you and what's good for the relationship. And your partner will be doing the same thing. And so you're growing together. But it does require that there's some trust and mutual respect. Because if you don't trust, then when your partner is working with you and nurturing the relationship, you're busy wondering what's the ulterior motive? Why are they doing this? And you think that they're being self serving. They just want you to do those things to please them, but they're trying to nurture the relationship. So when we're doing this, it involves becoming more self aware. You have to understand who you are and how you show up. You have to become more emotionally mature. Don't take everything personally. Don't look at it as an attack. If you feel attacked, I gave you a little bit of language on how to use. Don't blame your partner for attacking you, but say when you do whatever that behavior was, or when you say whatever it was that they said, I feel, and then you let them know. So I'm not accusing you of attacking me. I'm just saying that when you do that, I feel kind of vulnerable. I feel like you're judging me, and it's in a hurtful kind of a way. So we have to find ways to communicate our feelings a little bit better. And when you're nurturing a relationship, it requires you to be consistent with your effort. You can't be all over the board. The person has to know what they can expect from you. So consistency is important. And that doesn't mean that you have to be trying all of the time. It means that your effort has to be consistent. So you don't always have to be consistently trying, but you do have to consistently show that you're willing to try. Hope that makes sense to you. So you can't show up one way today and another way 2 weeks from now. Or you can't put forth some effort this month and then skip the next 2 months. That's not being consistent. Your partner needs to feel secure by knowing what to expect from you. And that's going to take a lot of open communication and some intentional actions, because you've got to build this emotional intimacy. Next week, the next topic we're going to talk about has a lot to do with communication. It talks about the power of our words. And so you really want to tune in on that, because so much of the time we are behind what's happening in the relationship. And what I mean by that is words have power. And so you're either moving someone in a positive direction with your words or in a negative direction. But seldom does someone remain neutral after you have said something to them. They're either moved in a positive direction or moved in a negative direction. So we have to get behind understanding the power of our words. And we are going to spend some time on that on the next show. But an intentional action, I said with intentionality. That requires you to be deliberate and purpose driven. You need to have a specific goal in mind. So if you know how you want your partner to respond, whether it's verbally or with a behavior, then what will it take knowing them the way I know them and working towards nurturing the relationship? How do I get them from point A to point B? It's not a self serving thing, but it is intentional and it does involve certain goals. And so, that's why, again, I sometimes talk about whether or not you work with a coach, a counselor, or maybe you can just be mentored by, maybe in your community or your church or your family, there's a couple that you admire. Maybe they're older, they're more mature, they've been married a long time, they seem to really get along well and like being around one another. Just talk to them, ask questions about how they handle certain situations, and it might help you handle similar situations in your own life. So, when we're talking about mutual growth, and again, if you want to get in on this conversation, call me at 412 213 8995, or you can text me 412 218 3888, because I'm sure as you're listening, something is popping into your head. So don't be afraid to share it. Maybe you disagree. Maybe you've had a similar experience. Maybe it hasn't happened to you, but you know someone who it has happened to. Or maybe you're thinking, wow, if I had done things a little bit differently, I might still be in that last relationship. All of it is fair game. So let's talk about it. But, going back to the topic at hand, um, something sometimes it's something that you thought about, including like rewards and consequences, and you did it on purpose. That all goes into being intentional. And so things like expressing daily gratitude, thanking them, even though maybe she washes the dishes every night. Thank her for washing the dishes. Maybe he takes the garbage out every night. Thank him for taking it out. It doesn't mean you have to say that every day, every time, but don't take things for granted. That's part of the mutual growth process. People like being rewarded, they like positive feedback, and you're more inclined to get them to continue a good behavior by rewarding it than you are to get them um, to stop a bad behavior by criticizing it. So when you see them doing what you want them to do, thank them for it because it moves them in that direction as opposed to jumping all over them when they do something that's out of whack. So we have to work on this whole thing of personal growth. In a partnership, growth cannot be one-sided, or one person might outgrow the other. And then sometimes when that happens, maybe when you get into a relationship, maybe neither one of you are college educated. One of you decides to go back to school and get an education. And so now that you're into learning and increasing your earning potential, and you're into, elevating and expanding your mind, now you want your partner to do the same. I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. I'm not saying that it would not be good for them to do that. But that's when we can get into that trap of the fixer upper. Because now, we came together on one premise. We never talked about continually growing. We never talked about going back to school, but you went off and went to school. Good for you. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you now have to push me to do the same thing. So in a partnership, you've got to be growing together. If you decided to go to school, you have to be okay with the fact that your partner did not. And your partner has to be okay with the fact that you chose to go back to school, even though they don't. And so we often think about helping the other person become better, but that's one sided. It's not I'm helping you become better, it's we are both becoming better together. And that doesn't mean that we have to do the same things, like the same things, do the things at the same time. We just have to give one another space and grace. Space and grace. Space to be who they are, and grace when they fall short of our expectations or our desires. So each person is responsible for their own growth. Don't try to push somebody else to do something. They're responsible for their own growth, and the relationship should be a space that supports that growth. So, it sounds more like I'm working on myself and I see you working on yourself too. And again, it doesn't have to be the same thing. Maybe I decided to go back to school and get a college education. Maybe you decided that you were just going to become the best mechanic in your shop. Both have value. It's not like one is better than the other, but I'm growing the way I want to grow. You're growing the way you want to grow. And the important thing is that we're both growing. It could also sound like we challenge each other. but we're not trying to control each other. So it should be challenging. It should be not in a bad way, but in a stimulating way. Somebody who helps you think about things differently or approach life differently, look at things from a different perspective. That's how we grow. So you should be okay with that. It should be somebody who helps to stimulate you, but not someone who helps to or who tries to control you. So again, call in thoughts, comments, questions. It's all fair game. So when we talk about mutual growth, there's a shift that takes place. But in that shift, you're not pushing, you're not dragging them, you're walking side by side. And that creates respect instead of resentment. The shift begins with those I statements that I talked about. And if I tell you how situations make me feel, and I don't want to feel that way, I'm relying on you to help create a space where I can feel the way I want to feel. I'm not telling you what to do or what not to do. I'm just telling you some of the behaviors and how they will affect me and what you can expect from me as a result of that. So that's part of how we need to make this shift happen. So I've got a couple of text messages. Thank you for texting in. Let me see what folks are saying. Uh, Hold on. All right. Got somebody texting in that they're listening. Thank you. We appreciate that. Okay. All right. Let's keep going. So we have to provide acceptance with evolution. Okay. So it's a balance. You got to find that sweet spot, accepting them as they are while they continue to grow. So I see you and I choose you as you are. That's what acceptance says. Evolution says, I see you, I choose you as you are, and I believe we can both grow into even better versions of ourselves. So you still allow room for growth, but you're accepting them as they are. And here's the key: acceptance comes first, growth comes second. So don't push the growth, accept them first. When you see someone and you choose them, that gives them perhaps some incentive to then at least hear you when you talk to them about possible growth areas. And that growth has to line up with who we each want to be. I can't be growing into something that you want me to be unless I want to be that as well. In a relationship, we have to take the needs of our partner into consideration as we plan our growth. But the focus of growth should be on self. How can I become a better version of me, not how he can become a better version of him? He's responsible for his behavior and his activity. So I get to grow into who I want to be. You get to grow into who you want to be. And no matter what happens, I will continue to see you and I will continue to choose you. That's what people want. So of course, I'm not talking about in, you know, hurtful or abusive situations, but just in your normal life. These are the things that we need to be focused on. So here are some signs of an evolving relationship. Mastering conflict. When you can move from avoiding conversation because you don't want to start an argument or a fight to resolving the conflict constructively with open and considerate communication, then you know you're mastering conflict. Some people avoid conflict and they think that, best way not to have it is just to avoid it. And that's not true because those feelings will build up and then resentment sets in. And many times when they do speak, everything that they've been holding on to for so long all comes out at you whoosh, and it's like, well, where did that come from? Because they've been avoiding the conflict. So don't always think of it. Conflict isn't necessarily a bad thing. Conflict brings about change, it brings about growth, it brings about innovation. When if two people think the same all the time, it's redundant. One of them is not necessary. You need for there to be a little bit of a challenge, a little bit of a rub in there. Just don't take it personally. Don't take it as if you're being attacked. You're being expanded. You're evolving. So mastering conflict is one sign that you are evolving or that the relationship is evolving. Another one is shared responsibility, actively working on the relationship to meet new challenges together, like managing the family or career changes, managing finances. If something happens to one person, financial situation, it affects the entire family. So it's not like that's their problem. Oh, you lost your job. That's your problem. You need to find another job. No, that's a family problem. We all need to shift. So let's sit down as a family and talk about what it is that we're going to do to compensate for that lost income. And we may all have to cut back a little. You can't assume the attitude of, well, I still got my money, so I'm still going to do the things I used to do. No, no, that's not an evolving relationship. You have to accept them. Yes, when they came to you, they were making a certain amount of money. Right now, there's a temporary setback, but you still need to accept them and choose them. Another sign of an evolving relationship is support for individuality, allowing each other space to grow personally, which strengthens the overall combined partnership. Remember, I said space and grace. And then conscious connection, consistently creating a head, heart, and physical connection through daily intentional actions. You need to be connected to your partner on those three levels. Your head level, in other words, we need to have some meeting of the minds around certain things. We need to be of the same mindset with respect to the goals that we want for our family and our future, those kinds of things. So, from the headspace, we need to learn how to merge our thinking. Don't have to change, but merge our thinking in a way that is mutually beneficial and good for the family. And then there's the heart piece, the emotions. When one of you is feeling sad, does the other, console? Do you ask questions? Do you try to help? Do you offer suggestions? If she needs a hug, do you give her a hug? If he needs space, do you give him space? Whatever it is, but your heart has to be in it. And so we got the head, we've got the heart, we've got the physical connection. Physical connection doesn't always have to mean sex, though that's not a bad way to physically connect, but it doesn't always have to be that. It might just be sitting close. It might be holding hands every now and then when you go for a walk. It might be passing by and patting him on the butt. It could be walking into the kitchen and giving her a kiss, whatever it happens to be. But there has to be a touch element involved in it as well. So we need to connect in terms of the head, the heart, and then the physical connection. And when those things happen, you know that your relationship is evolving, because as challenges grow, and they will, you've got to be growing along with the challenges. An evolving relationship isn't always going to be smooth. That's not what you're looking for. It requires conscious effort, intentionality, sometimes working your way through discomfort to reach a higher level of partnership. It's almost like, you know, um, this is not the best analogy, but it's what just popped into my head. It's almost like the no pain, no gain. When you're working out and you have a goal in mind, whether you want to lose weight, you want to bulk up, you just want to be in better health, you want to be faster at running, swimming, whatever the case might be, you know that there's going to be some pain involved, because change requires that. Growth requires that. You know that you're going to go through a period of discomfort, but if you keep your eye on the prize, if you keep in mind where you're going with this, it helps take a little bit of the burden off of the pain that you're going through. And the same thing happens in an evolving relationship. If you know that maybe you have to do a little extra, pick up some slack here and there now and then, but it's helping the relationship grow, and you know that it's going to be so much better on the other side, that should also give you some incentive to want to endure some of the discomfort, because you have to go from me to we, and in order to get to a higher level, you're going to have to go through some things. So healthy love doesn't require perfection, but it does require willingness. And that's another reason why in the previous segment we talked about, you can't make your partner into a project. They have to be willing to make changes and do whatever it is that you would desire for them to do. Neither of you will ever reach perfection, but that doesn't give you permission to stop trying. So you need to keep working on it if, in fact, it's something, taking you in a direction where you want to go. And then I would also throw in, with mutual growth, we're looking at respect for autonomy. We need to make sure, excuse me, that this is where people are thriving as individuals. You can't become codependent. We'll talk about that as well. You can't get to a place where one can't function without the other. You have to become autonomous so that you can do things on your own. You might want to do things together, and that's fine, but you have to be able to stand on your own and not totally rely on somebody else. So autonomy means He's still his own man, and she's still her own woman. No one is managing the other, no one is parenting the other, no one is overriding the other. Each person has the right to make their own decisions, to learn lessons, and to grow at their own pace, even when it's uncomfortable. And so, even though I'm saying a person has a right to make their own decisions in a marriage situation, that doesn't mean that you're not uh, cons- uh, I'm losing the word. It doesn't mean that you're not discussing it, let's say, with your partner. It doesn't mean that your spouse is not involved in the decision that you're making. Consulting, that's the word I was looking for. Doesn't mean that you're not consulting them on things, because it's a we, not a me. But you still need to be independent with respect to your thinking and don't become a yes person. So, rejecting, or rather respecting, autonomy in marriage involves balancing togetherness and independence. You have to find that sweet spot. And that's by encouraging separate hobbies, separate friendships, personal goals, clear boundaries. Make sure that everybody has time to do their thing. Maybe one of you likes to get involved in bowling and the other one doesn't. Okay, find something else to do when he's bowling, or do nothing. That's your me time. Chill, stay at home, relax, enjoy the peace and quiet, whatever the case might be. So you still have to, yes, there are things we'll do together, but you still have to allow the other person to do things on their own if that's what they choose to do. And then you set and you respect certain physical, emotional, and even digital boundaries, like privacy with phones, or needing alone time. The whole digital space is interesting. So I'm not saying that husbands and wives should not share codes to the phone or their email or whatever. That's up to you whether or not you choose to do that. But you don't want to invade someone's privacy, even if your spouse has given you enough trust and respect to show you, hey, I'm not doing anything. Here's my code. You can get in and access my stuff anytime you want. That doesn't mean that you need to go in there and be looking just because you have, the key kind of thing. So we need to respect people digitally as well as respecting other boundaries. And again, the more technologically advanced we become, it just adds new layers of ways that we need to be considerate of one another. So if you make a request or extend an invitation, show that you're comfortable hearing no and respect their need to make their own choices. Maybe you feel like doing something and he doesn't. Okay, cool. Is it something that you can go off and do yourself? Maybe you wanted to go to one of your favorite restaurants to eat. He doesn't want to go. Then maybe you just say, hey, do you mind if I go by myself? And then just go. And if you're not married, then what? Well, if you want to get married, or even if you're not sure, you need to establish a relationship that respects autonomy. You have to respect people's privacy, whether you're married or not. Respecting autonomy in a dating relationship is similar to respecting autonomy in a marriage. Give them space. Just because the two of you are in a relationship does not mean that you have to know where they are at all times, who they're with, and what they're doing. They should not have to send you pictures to prove they are where they say they are. They shouldn't have to put a buddy on the phone so that you know. Give them space. So before we break, we just give you a few key ways to show respect for autonomy. So here are some things you can do that let your partner know, I'm giving you space. I'm respecting the fact that you are your own person, and I'm backing up and allowing you to be that. One is to establish and respect boundaries. You have to communicate your own needs and limits and values, do it clearly while actively listening to and honoring your partner's boundaries. And that includes respecting their need for time alone or with others without feeling threatened. I'm reminded of a time when a girlfriend of mine was upset because she and her spouse were at one of their children's athletic events. I think it might have been basketball. And they were on opposite sides of the gym, but she was calling him on the phone and she could see him, and he was talking to a friend, a male friend, but he was talking to a friend, and he looked at the phone, saw it was her, and kept talking, and she got incensed. It's like, he's not answering my call. He knows it's me. He saw me on there. Yeah, but you just hung up with him. And because he had a previous conversation. And then he walked around to see his friend. So he can see you. So he knows that it's not an emergency. You're not in any need or any trouble. He'll get right back to you. That can be a matter of, respecting autonomy, allowing them to have just a few minutes. He's going to call you right back. It's those kinds of things. Another way to respect or show that you respect autonomy is to encourage the individual identity by supporting their hobbies, their friendships, their goals, all of that. So maybe softball is not your thing, but she plays on a softball team. Go to the games, encourage her, cheer her on. You're encouraging her individual identity when you do things like that. You need to practice open communication. I think we you understand that we harp on communicate. I don't want to say harp. That's a bad word. We discuss open communication in virtually all of the shows because it is so important and it plays a role no matter what the topic is that we're discussing. You want to validate decisions. Accept your partner's choices about their life, their body, their future, even if you would have chosen differently. You have to establish what the boundaries are. How much autonomy are you willing to let someone have with their body? What I mean by that is, let's say she wants to go and have some part of her body enhanced. What's the boundary? Because it's her body, do you just say, well, that's your decision? Or is it something that you both need to agree on? Perhaps she wants to get a certain tattoo. Do you just say, well, that's her body? She does what she wants to do with her body? Or do you have the kind of agreement where we're going to discuss these things before you do that? I'm not saying that there's a right or wrong. I'm just saying you have to find what works for you. And then lastly, you have to maintain your own autonomy. Do not neglect your own needs, your own friends, your own interests because you're maintaining your identity or because you're trying to congeal this relationship. So those are all important things. And so before we break, let me just give you this one hard truth, okay? Give you this final thought, then we'll take a break. Respecting autonomy means letting the other person choose, even if you wouldn't make the same choice. Because the moment you start controlling your partner's choices, the relationship shifts from partnership to project supervision. All right. So there you have it. How and why to treat your partner as a partner and not a project. It's something to fix or to be improved. And when we come back, we'll look at a trend, going to shift topics. And we're going to look at a trend that's happening a lot in social media and on TV, where we are seeing men, now it's my turn to get on you, where we're seeing men, particularly black men, who are dating outside the race and outside the country, and it's not that this is new or that it's being frowned upon. I'm not saying that men should not date. I'm not saying anybody should not date outside their race or outside the country. But what is new is the increased number of men who are traveling overseas to find love and the reasons why they're saying that they do it. So that will be the topic when we come back. This is Relationship Conversations with Dr. Linda Bing on Pittsburgh's DSEN.
Yes. Each Saturday, we throw it back with some of the best old school music, funk, R&B, old school, rap, hip hop, and all the jams that make you move and dance. Yes, check it out. Each Saturday, right here on Pittsburgh's DSEN, all the old school jams, 6 to 11 p.m.
Pittsburgh, have you seen our Sunday radio schedule? Ooh, it is lit. Start the day off with our Sunday gospel music from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. It will inspire you and have you praising the Lord. Then from 3 to 8 p.m., we bring you Sunday jazz melody for all the jazz lovers. Then cap off the night with The Quiet Storm from 8 to 11 p.m. to hear the best smooth, romantic, and soulful R&B sounds of yesterday and today. All that each Sunday on Pittsburgh's DSEN, the place for soul.
Looking for a cost effective way to help increase your company's bottom line? Look no further than Soul Pit Media. With our award winning print, internet, podcast, and Soul Pit television options, we can help your business get to that next level. For more information, contact Craig Dawson at 412 407 7685. That's 412 407 7685. And let Soul Pit Media take you to that next level.
Business
All right, so
owners
good.
thinking about back to school promotions and replacing summer flavors with pumpkin? What about your taxes? Reduce your stress and tax liabilities by planning for tax time now with Cameron Professional Services Group. CPSG takes your goals, values, and visions to create a custom tax plan catered specifically to your business. We work closely with you to ensure that as your business grows and goals shift, so will your custom plan. Located in the Hill District in Pittsburgh, PA, CPSG is a CPA and consultant firm providing services in accounting, auditing, tax planning and preparation, community development, and operational management. Call Cameron Professional Services Group today at 412-251-0607.
Have you had the Beat by Niche experience? Beat by Niche is one of the top makeup artists in the city of Pittsburgh. She's touched the face of Cardi B, love and hip hop personalities, and various Steeler wives. If you have not sat in her chair, what are you waiting for? Visit beatbyniche.com to schedule your special makeover for all occasions: weddings, graduations, proms, photo ops, and more. Visit beatbyniche.com and experience the touch of excellence.
The words left me cold and gray. I had almost reached heaven just to feel it slip away. But life's too short to waste away being scared to take chances, or so I heard wise men
Welcome back.
say.
Welcome back. This is Relationship Conversations. I'm Dr. Linda Bing, and this is Pittsburgh's DSEN. We're shifting gears. We moved to a new topic that we're going to talk about. But before I even get into the topic, I know that some of you are catching the show by streaming on YouTube, some are on the website, maybe you're at TuneIn Radio or one of the other streaming platforms. Just put in the chat or the comment section or send me a text and just let us know, where are you listening? Where are you tuning in from? I'm just curious to see what platforms people are actively on right now. And while you're doing that, I want to open this new segment by first putting out this disclaimer. I have nothing against people dating outside of their race or outside of their country. That's not what this new segment is about. Who you love is your business, and I think you should embrace true agape love wherever you find it. But there is this trend on social media where many Black men say that Black women are too aggressive, too masculine, and not submissive enough. So they have decided to look outside the race. That perception is causing them to look to other races, and it's causing them to look to other cultures. And so there's also trending this storyline of it's a franchise of shows, and whether you watch them or not, you can't help, if you're on those channels, you cannot help but see some of the commercials. So they've got all of these commercials and trailers for shows where, like 90 Day Fiance and 90 Days the Other Way, and all these different things where people are intentionally looking outside of their own country, not just people in the US, but other countries as well, looking outside their own country, and in many instances their own culture and race, in order to find love. And so, just as we were talking in the first hour about men being treated like projects or anybody being treated like a project. But since we're focusing on men in this segment, if a man feels like a project in one space, he will go where he feels like he can just be. And that might look like another woman who feels more accepting. It could be his friends. Maybe his friends don't challenge him, so he spends more time with friends. Maybe he spends more time working because he feels competent and respected at the job. Or, yes, he might even go to another country where the dynamic feels different. The core driver is he's not just leaving a person, he's leaving a feeling. And we're going to do a little bit of exploration around what he is actually looking for. But before we do that, Diva is on the phone. Where have you been, Diva? Glad that you're listening tonight. What's going on?
How are you doing? Happy Mother's
Uh,
Day.
Thank you. Happy Mother's Day to you as well. And I'm doing well. What's going on? What's on your mind tonight?
A couple things, and welcome back. Definitely missed your show. I wanted to talk about two things. The first is how can young people really keep their self esteem high or improve it with the dynamics of social media? You know, as I was growing up, we didn't have all that, and so, I mean, we still had um, self esteem issues that you had to work through. But I think it's even at a higher level now because of how much social media the young people do use. And some of it is just so very negative,
I would agree.
imagery
Social
wise.
media, yeah, and you know what's so interesting about social media is we look at it and we tend to believe what we see, but a lot of the things people are posting not true. And people only post good things for the most part. They don't really talk about the bad things that are going on in life. So young people are looking at social media and they see, wow, all these good things are popping for these people. Well, no, they're just telling you the good things. So one thing that they can do is to stop putting so much weight on what they see on social media. Don't believe all that you see. But another thing is to come off of social media. Don't be on there so much. And if you're on, go to sites that are going to be wholesome, things that are going to pour into your mind and spirit. So maybe you listen to podcasts that are good for you. Maybe you find inspirational messages on YouTube. Maybe as you're listening to songs and watching music videos, find the ones that are uplifting, that talk about positive things so that you're constantly filling your cup with good, positive things. Find some support groups, get off of the screen and go be with people. Not necessarily people that you go to school with, but it could be maybe you join some other type of organization that expands your mind. When I was coming up, a lot of it was, Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts or Girls Club and Boys Club, those
Mm-hmm.
kinds of things. So
Yeah.
maybe you find something like that where you're getting with other people who have similar goals and ambitions, who are also trying to grow their minds. Or we used to do a lot of after school activities. So whether it was
Mm-hmm.
sports or maybe it was a drama club or Spanish club or chess club, find another interest. And when you're doing things that you enjoy and that you're good at, it builds that self-esteem. So you've got to find the right support. So you want to back up from the things that make you feel bad and move towards the things that are pouring into you. Look for ways to um, reaffirm who you are. And, again, I'd be remiss if I did not bring up my foundation. There are lots of books out there. Even if you're not reading the Bible, there are books that are biblically based that come from a perspective to show you who God says you is. Forget what these folk on social media are saying. Who does God say you are? And those are some of the things when you can do all of that together, pulling back from social media, finding things online that are wholesome and uplifting and encouraging, getting involved in real life activities, whether it's a professional group, a recreational group, after school club or committee, and then pouring into yourself with reading. We need to get back to reading and pick up a book. Not everything needs to be read on your phone. Get a book. feel the paper between your fingers, underline things that are important to you. So those are some of the things that I would say, Diva. There is a crisis going on because we are losing our young people. Whenever things get to a point where young people are ending their lives because of things
I
that were on
know.
social media,
Yes.
being bullied,
Terrible.
or yeah, or the people that, there were
Hmm.
reports about kids who AI told them to kill themselves, so they did. We have gone way too far with this technology things, and it's not just the kids. Granted, when teenagers get to be, of a certain age, and when kids go off to college, yes, parents have less control over it, but you have little people. I mean, like elementary school age kids who have phones because it's become another form of entertainment or a babysitter. Now, I'm not saying that kids shouldn't have maybe some sort of a tablet where they can watch cartoons or, play games on it, learn educational things. That's fine. But when you give them free access to the internet and they are still in elementary school or middle school and you don't have parental controls on there or you're not aware of what they're watching. I know sometimes parents will say, oh, they're just watching music videos. Okay, well, not every song is appropriate for your 11-year-old. So parents need to get more involved. We can't just put it all off on the kids, but parents, know what your kids are doing, what is feeding their spirit. I was reminded, actually, it was in church a couple of Sundays ago where our pastor brought up the example. I'm aging myself, but maybe you can remember this as well. When there was a time growing up when we really only had like 3 or 4 TV channels. You could not watch TV all day and all night. And television went off at a certain time at night. And the flag was on the screen and they were playing,
Hmm.
I forget if it was the national anthem, but there was on one channel, there was someone who always came on and said, it's 10 p.m. Do you know where your children are? And I mean, it's that kind of thing. Regardless of what time it is, it's like moms and dads wake up. Do you know where your children are? Do you know what they're watching? Do you know who they're hanging out with? So it's got to come from both ways. We need to create more spaces and encourage our children to get into those spaces. And parents, you got to pay more attention. Don't just let them, let the phone and the laptop or the iPad be a babysitter for you. Know what your children are pouring into their bodies and their minds. It's so important. So important. But thank you, Miss Diva.
Excellent.
It was so
Excellent.
good to hear from you.
Yes. Can I just make one ask you to just, and I'll hang up, but if you could just make a comment on this as well. I think as women, especially once you become a mom, your life ends up getting consumed by, what your kids are doing. And then once they get older, that now they're young, they're not young adults, but they're like say in high school. Now they start kind of pulling away. Now they're with their friends more. And I think as women, some of us, and I went through this myself, as my kids got older and started having their friends, then I found that I lost a lot of my relationships. I also lost a lot of the things that I used to like to do as an individual. I don't think the men have this because they never really change their habits. They still hang out with their friends. They still do, the different things socially that they like to do. But it's like women, our focus changed because it's so focused in on the kids that it's a number of years that you kind of lose what you used to do as an individual or even pre-mom. And for me, I had to take stock to go back and reconnect with my friends, go back and reconnect with those things that I like to do as an individual, because I think at one point I got, so focused in on my kids, focused in on my husband and stuff that he liked to do that I forgot my individuality. And so it's taken me some time to get that back. What it is, I almost forgot about the stuff that I really like to do, like going to the library, going to museums, never lost going to concerts, but generally I'm going to concerts, with my husband. So if you could even talk about that, because I think that's real too. We as women, we start focusing on either our husbands and definitely on our kids. And then we got to go back to our individuality. But there's probably some ladies out there that's never, maybe never even affected them. But I know it did affect me. So I had to reconnect with people and reconnect to who I was as a single person to say, yeah, I do like this. And maybe my husband doesn't like going to the museums, but I do. So, I need to, like you said, I need to do those things sometime on my own. But, my husband, he will go with me, which is really nice too. But for things that I really like to do that maybe somebody else doesn't like to do, I'm empowering myself to just do it. I did it as a
I feel
single.
you.
I can do it as a married woman who has, now adult kids.
Hmm.
So
Good. Thank you for that.
yeah.
I definitely feel you on that one. In fact, last week, a friend and I, this is a friend that I've known her, probably 30 years. I think her youngest child was about 2 when we met, and he's in his early 30s now. But anyway, she and I were having a conversation the other day, and she was asking me, what do I like to do for fun? And I had to stop and think. And I told her, I said, I really don't know. In fact, I don't know that I do anything for fun. And she looked at me kind of strange and said, I'm not saying that I don't enjoy myself or have a good time, but to me, fun is something that makes me laugh. I mean, it's something that's active that I can, get involved in the activity and laugh out loud and have a good time. So I might enjoy going to a movie or a concert with my husband, but I wouldn't call that fun. I might enjoy relaxing and reading a book, but I wouldn't call that fun. So, yeah, there are things
Mhm.
that are enjoyable in my life, but when you get to fun, that's a whole different level for me. And then I flipped it and asked her, and she couldn't tell me what was fun, what she does for fun either. And so, that's
Exactly.
a real life recent example of exactly what you're saying. Because now that our kids are grown and out of the house, I think sometimes we feel like, now what am I supposed to do? And that's why some
Exactly.
people, yeah, some people get that empty nest syndrome because you put so much effort into your children that when your children leave, if a part of you is gone, and your purpose seems
Yeah.
to have shifted, and what do I do? But one thing I will say is I think that's more in Gen X and baby boomers than it is like in Gen Z and the alpha generation. The younger people, I what I'm seeing trending is that moms and dads are more involved in the children's lives. And so it's not all falling on moms. And I think a lot of that comes from these younger women looking to us and seeing what we did or hearing us talk about it and deciding that their life's not going to be like that. I'm not going to spend all of
Exactly.
my time taking care of kids. In fact, they're waiting longer to have kids. They're getting all the fun out first before they have children. So I think it's a very real thing that we it's just the way we're socialized. I don't know if I buy into the fact that women are more nurturing than men. I think we both have the potential for it, but I do think that in our socialization, women are socialized to be more nurturing, because there are some fathers out there that are very nurturing, and there are some fathers that step in, like if a mother leaves or she dies, and they do the nurturing. I've had male friends through the years who, they could braid their daughter's hair better than some of the women that I knew. So there are men
Hmm.
who can do those things, but I think we're socialized into certain roles. And now these generations that are coming up don't fall into those same stereotypes. They are blending more things. And so I'm hopeful that as they mature, they won't go through some of that same loss of identity that many of us have experienced. Because now, like I said, I got to figure out, now that she asked me, I got to find something to do that's fun. I feel like this is on my mind now. And again, I'm not saying that I don't do things that are enjoyable, but I make a distinction between something I enjoyed and something that was fun. So if you think of some good things, by all means, share it with us. How do we get our identity back? How do we figure out, after all those years, what is it that's fun for us? I agree with you. I don't think men in our generation um, have the same issue, because there are a lot of things that they've continued to do, whether it was playing golf or going to the gym to shoot hoops or whatever. There's a lot of the fun things that they continue to do. And for many of us, we did not necessarily have the time, because we're working full time like they are as well. But then we also have the children and the house, many times, not always, to take care of as well. And so, where was their time to go and have fun?
Exactly. Well, thank you, Dr. Linda. Always enjoy your show, and
Thank you.
I look forward to calling in again.
Appreciate you. Thanks, Diva.
Uh-huh. Take care.
All right. Bye bye.
Bye-bye.
That's great. I'm so glad she called in. You guys have got to know that the best part of the show for me is when people call in and we engage. It's called relationship conversations for a reason. It's not a relationship monologue. Yes, there's information I can pour into you, but it is so much easier and so much more enjoyable when we're talking and we're going back and forth. So I know that sometimes we get comments from people about they enjoy it, and I'm glad you enjoy it, and I'm glad you tune in. But by all means, let's get some dialogue going, and it makes it more interesting for other people as well, rather than just hearing my voice go on and on and on for 2 hours. So at any rate, before we take our break, a couple of things I want to share with you. I mentioned before I started talking with Diva that when that man leaves to find some space of his own, he's not just leaving a person, he's leaving a feeling. It's the feeling that is driving him away. And whether or not we agree with his perception that Black women are too aggressive, too masculine, and not submissive enough, he's giving us a gift in some ways, because he's saying there's something not right here, and the fact that it's driving them away says to me, okay, maybe we need to look in the mirror before we just get offended by what's being said, or before we say he's wrong. Let's look in the mirror and see if we can see what he sees, and if there's some way that we can interact with each other. It might have to be a mutual thing. He might have to change a little bit while we change a little bit, but there might be something that we can do a little bit differently, because he's looking for a space where he feels accepted, not assessed, a place where he feels appreciated, not an improvement project, and a place where he feels respected, not managed. So even if you think to some of the things that Diva and I were just talking about, when as a woman, when you devote so much of your time and energy to, we say raising children, it becomes a part of your DNA almost, and especially if you're a professional woman and you holding it down at work and coming home and holding it down in the house and with the children, it's almost a switch that you don't readily know how to shut off when it comes to a man. And it's not like we're trying to wear the pants. It's not like we want to be in control or be the manager of the house. But sometimes, honestly, we don't know how to turn it off. And sometimes we don't even realize that the switch is on. It just becomes a part of who you are. So we just have to remember and be mindful of those things. I know when I used to counsel couples, one of the things that I would say is, and I may have shared this with you before, but I would ask them, come up with something that's funny, or a character or a person that when things start to get a little out of hand, it's almost like waving the white flag. It should be something that makes you both kind of giggle. There was a couple that he used her mother as an example. She did not want to be like her mother, and let's say her mother's name was Ethel. When she would start getting into that mode, he would be like, okay, Ethel, and they would both kind of fall out, and she would be like, oh, no, no, I'm not going to be Ethel. He's like, okay, well, you starting to sound a little like Ethel to me. And it was just a lighthearted way of pulling her back so that she could be more intentional and recognize what she was doing and how it was making him feel. So if he is moving his attention elsewhere, whether it's friends, work, or in the cases like we're talking about now, if it's looking outside of the culture to another one, to a culture that he perceives as being more submissive. A lot of times, what I'm seeing is, because I told you, I watch a variety of things on television, and some of my best, I won't say information, well, it's information. It may not be fact and data and all of that, but it's information. Some of my best information comes from watching some of these outlandish shows. It doesn't mean that I watch them all the time, but to pop in and out of them on occasion just to see what's going on and what's trending, I see a lot of men, black and white, going to Asian cultures. So, and there's a lot going to the Philippines. There's something that they think they can get there that they're not getting here. And that doesn't mean that we need to necessarily change who we are or how we do things, but just be aware and understand that something is driving him away. So, if that relationship is important to you and you don't wish to drive him or them, if you're dating and still trying to find the one, you don't want to drive them away, then just think about how you might be able to just switch up a little bit or soften a little bit. Maybe it's just a matter of you're not changing, but you're just softening the edges a little bit. Because again, in you know, full disclosure, when I'm sure that I had to relearn some things because there was a period between marriages where I'm running a business, I'm running a house, I'm raising boys, and I don't have time to slow down and do some of the other things. And so then when a man would come into my life, it's like, look, babe, I need you to keep up with me. I need you to keep up. I need you to fall into my flow, my efficiency. And I'm not saying that that's necessarily right, but it is the way that things were. It was my reality. And so to some extent, you have to learn how to cut that off. You can run the job, but when you come home, you need to soften a little bit. And when there's nobody in the house to balance that with, like when there's nobody else to stand up and be strong, you have to do that. So if there's a woman who is between marriages, between relationships, maybe never married in all these in, her years, then she knows how to be strong. She may have to either relearn or be reminded how to just soften the edges. It doesn't mean that you're diminishing, that you need to diminish yourself for him, none of that, but just know how to soften the edges just a little bit. So yeah, we run into a lot of things. Black women, we are often put into those situations. We're socialized where we have to be strong. That's just part of our makeup. There are very few Black women you will talk to, particularly of a certain age, who did not receive messages that we had to be strong, never let them see you sweat, twice as good as everybody else to be given half the chance. There was a lot of pressure put on us. And that's not an excuse, it's an explanation for why we may come off so strong. But it doesn't mean that we can't be softened. And it's a lot easier to be soft when you have someone that has your back. If I know that you're here and you're down for me and you're strong and you got this, it makes it easier for me to let go of the reins and say, okay, I don't have to do that anymore because he's got this. So there's a give and take. And then, of course, on the job, there are all kinds of workplace issues and social biases. And then there's the whole intersectionality. We're not only women in a male dominated world, but we're Black in a white dominated world. So yeah, Black women, we get it in all different directions. And again, not an excuse, but just one of those aha moments to say, yes, sis, you got a lot going on. However, look at how it's impacting our men and relationships. And if there's some area where you might be able to flex just a little bit, just think about it. Think about it. So we're going to take a break. When we come back, I would love to hear your thoughts on the subject. Do you also see this trend of people stepping outside the country to find love? What do you think about it? Has it happened to you? Are you a man who's done it? Would you consider doing it? I mean, the sky's the limit with respect to things that we can talk about. So let's take a break. And when we come back, I'll be looking for your comments. Okay. This is Relationship Conversations with Dr. Linda Bing on Pittsburgh's DSEN.
Pittsburgh. It's an old school party. Yes, each Saturday we throw it back with some of the best old school music, funk, R&B, old school, rap, hip hop, and all the jams that make you move and dance. Yes, check it out. Each Saturday right here on Pittsburgh's DSEN. All the old school jams, 6 to 11 p.m.
Pittsburgh, have you seen our Sunday radio schedule? Ooh, it is lit. Start the day off with our Sunday gospel music from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. It will inspire you and have you praising the Lord. Then from 3 to 8 p.m., we bring you Sunday jazz melody for all the jazz lovers. Then cap off the night with The Quiet Storm from 8 to 11 p.m. to hear the best smooth, romantic, and soulful R&B sounds of yesterday and today. All that each Sunday on Pittsburgh's DSEN, the place for soul.
Welcome back. Welcome back. We definitely have a lot of love to give, both men and women. We have a lot of love to give and we want to receive the love. So I'm trying to step in the gap every Monday night and just throw out little nuggets that can help us to do that. This is Relationship Conversations with Dr. Linda Bing on Pittsburgh's DSCN. And the trend that we were talking about, this trend of men going overseas to look for women, it has a name. It's called passport bros. Literally, there's a phenomenon that's talked about on social media called passport bros. And what it refers to is Black men seeking relationships abroad. They frequently visit countries. Here's some of the countries: Latin America, Southeast Asia, parts of Europe and Africa, Colombia, Brazil, the Philippines, Thailand, Costa Rica, Kenya, and Germany. Now, that was not a list for you brothers to say, oh, I'm going to go look in those places. Those are places where they tell me men are already looking, because whether it's true or not, there's a perception that those cultural differences will provide a more fulfilling relationship for them. And we as women can take two different approaches. We can either become upset and offended by it, or we can try to learn and grow from it. And I'm not saying that we're doing anything wrong. I'm not saying that we need to do anything differently, but all information is useful. Feedback is good. Feedback is good. And so some of the reasons that men say they're searching abroad is for improved reception. Many men say that they're being treated with more respect and admiration, and sometimes they're treated almost like a king in some of these places as compared to the way they're treated back home in the US. And so that's one of the things that's propelling them. They want to feel that feeling. Another one is cultural differences in dating. Some seek women from cultures that they believe are more family oriented, more traditional with respect to their roles. In some places it hasn't changed as much. They're almost back to where this country was like in the 50s, the June Cleavers who stayed home and took care of the house and the kids and the cooking, didn't work outside the home, those kinds of things. Some men like that and they want to go back to that traditional type of relationship. They can't find it here, so they look other places to see if they can get what it is that they want. And then higher value, the perception that Western men, including Black men, have higher dating value in some regions. There are some places where people actively want a Black man because of whatever they have come to believe about Black men. So, it's like their value goes up when they go other places, and so they go. Here's a comment that came from someone on Reddit. Couple of comments. The best places depend on what kind of lifestyle you are looking for. If you want a roster of girls, then Thailand, Brazil, the DR are good. If you're looking for a wife, then Kenya, Ethiopia, Philippines, and Japan are good places to go. To be clear, you need to be a provider. If you want 50-50, you need to go to Australia or Scandinavian countries. Now, I'm not endorsing that. I'm just sharing with you what people are putting out there. And they're just as somebody, maybe that's based on his experience, he put it down. Somebody's going to come along, pick it up, and run with it. Another one said, best places would be Latin America, Eastern Europe, Southeast Asia. That is my view. And then someone else said, honestly, Black Americans with a good sense of style are killing it internationally. So this is it. It's like, what is behind this passport bros movement? So at the surface, it sounds simple. It sounds like men are going overseas to find more traditional women, but underneath, there's something else going on. That's my job. Let's pull back some of these layers and see what's going on. So, one thing that we know is going on is the desire to feel respected and appreciated. Again, I just read to you some of these things about how they're being treated like kings and stuff. Not to say that we've got to do all of that, but are we doing enough to make them feel respected and appreciated? Some men are saying, I don't feel valued here. I feel criticized. I feel judged. So they are seeking environments where their efforts are praised. Remember, I told you just that daily gratitude. So what? He's supposed to bring his paycheck home. Thank him every now and then when he does. So what? He's the man of the house. He should be taking the trash out. Thank him every now and then when he does. Sometimes they feel like their roles are clearer in other environments and they feel like they matter. And so they don't want to be a project, they want to be a partner, and they will seek places where they feel they are given the freedom to be just that. Sometimes they are escaping from feeling like a project. They don't want to be corrected and coached and evaluated all the time. And even if we're doing it from what we think is a good place, I've got good intentions with trying to pour into you in this way, that's not our job. Your job is to accept him, to choose him, to love him, to respect him. And so he may interpret all of our good work as we're telling him, you're not enough as you are. You're not enough as you are, and you need to be better. You need to be more. So going elsewhere becomes, let me find a place where I'm accepted without all of these requirements. And then the last one in this category that I'll share is the perception of ease versus effort. People like convenience. Men, women, boy, girl, we like convenience. And so some men believe that relationships abroad are easier. They're less confrontational because the women over there, their cultures raise them to be more submissive or more traditional in terms of male, female, gender type roles. So there's less confrontation. They're less demanding. They're more cooperative. I'm not saying that's true. I'm saying that's the perception, and perception becomes someone's reality. We develop our thoughts and behaviors based on what we perceive. And if that's what he's perceiving, then he's going to go where he thinks he can find those things. So whether it's true or not is another conversation, but perception drives behavior. And if he believes it's going to be easier to be in a relationship somewhere else, that belief alone can motivate the move. So instead of rising to meet the expectations, he looks for a space where the expectation feels lower and it's easier to hit it because it's not as high. So here's the real deal: changing your location, men, doesn't automatically change your patterns. If you feel like a project here, you may eventually feel pressure there because the issue just isn't who you're with, it's how you show up in a relationship. So again, I'm not trying to beat you up. I'm just trying to give it to you straight. No chaser. Here it is 100. Okay. You may eventually feel pressure there because the issue isn't just about who you are. It's how you show up in a relationship. And so the same way you show up here is going to be the same way you show up there. And you're thinking that it's going to be handled differently, but over time, maybe not. So wanting peace is valid, but real partnership still requires growth and accountability and leadership. Even a woman who is submissive and willing to be led needs to have somebody that she can follow. So, are you being a leader over there, or are you just sitting back hoping that this submissive woman is going to do everything for you? Women still want leadership. That's not the same as control. It's not like we want someone to tell us what to do. I'm not saying any of that. But the only way we will give up leading is if we feel like there's somebody to follow. And so, no matter where you go, that's what it's going to be like. So, if a man feels like a project, he may go where he feels like a partner. But if he hasn't done his own work, he may simply go where he's not required to grow. And so, you're just going to be the same over there as you were over here. Now, that tension is where the real conversation lives, because what we're really talking about is the conversation is really all about Black women, how we're perceived, are we too strong, all of those things. It's about what happens when expectation, readiness, relationship skills are out of alignment. In the time that we have left, let me try to break some of that down for you. So, your expectation is what I believe a relationship should look like. What are you expecting her to bring? What do you think you need to bring? What is it that you think it should look like? Your expectation might be off, but it's driving you. So, what's your expectation? And then you also have to take into consideration the consistency. How often is that happening? And should it happen more? Should it happen less? Those are things you need to think about. She may be expecting some emotional availability from you. Maybe she's not getting it. This is a two-way street. So some of the things that you're not getting may be because she's not getting what she needs. And it's kind of like a circle where you jump in to find where it begins and where it ends. But those are some of the things that she's looking for: emotional availability. She's looking for some leadership. She's looking for consistency. She's looking for a growth mindset. Now, on the other hand, what he may expect is respect, appreciation, peace in a relationship, and partnership without feeling like he's being managed. So we have to get aligned on the expectations. We also need to look at readiness. Am I actually prepared to show up that way? This is where things get real because someone can want a great relationship, but not be ready to participate in one because a great relationship takes two. So you can't just come into it with what you expect your partner to do. You have to be ready to do your part as well. So he may want respect and peace, but not be ready to communicate consistently, to take accountability, to lead emotionally or practically. And she may want partnership, but not be ready to release control, to trust his process, and to allow space for the imperfections. So the tension comes in because you can desire something that you're not quite developed enough to sustain. It's one thing to have an expectation, but can you rise to the challenge? Are you ready to do your part in the type of relationship that you're asking for? And then I said, okay, expectation, readiness, and relationship skills need to be aligned. So, relationship skills. Do I know how to do this well? Some people really don't know how to be in relationship. And so this is the piece that people often skip. Love is not enough if the skills aren't there. You can love someone with your whole heart, but if you don't know how to communicate without criticizing and shutting them down, it's a problem. If you don't know how to resolve conflict without it escalating, problem. If you don't know how to regulate your emotions, have you mastered the skill of being in touch with what someone else was feeling, being able to express yourself through words, not by using your hands or by withholding certain things, whether it be affection or finances or something else. How emotionally mature are you? You have to pick up skills like learning how to listen without being defensive. Can you listen to really hear the person, or are you listening just so you can offer your rebuttal so that you can say, well, no, it's not like that? Or are you not even listening at all? You're just letting them go until they're finished when you can jump in and say what it is that you want to say. And do you know how to support without controlling? Do you really know how to support someone else in their own endeavors? So that's just the tip of the iceberg. There are so many skills necessary in relationships. And unfortunately, we're never taught that. We never get lessons on how to be in a relationship. It's as if it's supposed to be something natural because we're left to our own devices and we have to come up with we base things on what we may have received at home or seen at home, or what we didn't see, or what happened on television. All of those things warp our view of relationships, and we don't have anybody teaching us how to do it differently. So you have to learn relationship skills. Two people can have good intentions and still struggle because, sorry about that, because they don't know how to have a relationship. They don't have the proper tools. So when expectation, readiness, and relationship skills are out of alignment, high expectation and low readiness is going to give you a lot of pressure. When you have high expectations, but you're not ready, that's nothing more than a pressure cooker. When you're ready, but you have low skills, you're going to be frustrated because you're ready for this thing, but you don't have the proper tools to bring it to fruition. And then high skills and mismatched expectations leads to a disconnect. We might both be good at relationships, but we have totally different expectations of what we want out of the relationship. So we're not connected. So sometimes she's showing up with high expectations and high capability, and he's still developing readiness and skills. Or sometimes he's showing up when he's got high skills and high expectations, and she's not quite ready. It can go in so many different directions. Sometimes he wants peace and appreciation, but he hasn't built the capacity to lead or grow in the way that she needs. So there's not going to be peace because she feels as if she constantly has to guide and direct because he's not stepping into that role. So there really isn't anyone to blame in situations like that. I don't want you to walk away with that feeling like someone is at fault and that we need to be pointing fingers, because that's not what I'm saying. There's no one to blame, but we have to assess the situation so that we get a good understanding of what's going on. And that's why in many instances you need to either find that good couple that can sort of mentor you. And you don't have to share all your deep darks with them, but maybe ask a few questions. Bring a situation to them. Watch how they do things. Spend time with them and let their experience pour into you. Or maybe you have to go to some sort of counseling. Maybe it's a couples retreat. Maybe it's reading a book together on self improvement. Maybe it's getting a coach or a counselor. There's nothing. I really want to shape people's thinking with that, because we really feel like in many instances it's a waste of time and a waste of money. We feel like it's an invasion of privacy. But think about it. Everything that someone does well, they had a coach for. There's not a ball, a puck, a stick, or whatever that you will pick up and go out on a court or a field and do well if you haven't been coached. There's certain skills you have to have, and you run drills all day, 2 a days and 3 a days to get the football stuff right. These are things that we do, and we don't balk at it in those areas. But when it comes to something that is so near and dear and highly personal, we don't want to do it. But nothing that you do well did you just naturally fall into. You might have some natural skills and abilities, but you go and get a coach to hone that stuff and make it just right. So I can't emphasize enough how sometimes coaches, we're not interested in your personal business to get into your business. We're interested in identifying what is it that's out of alignment, and what can we help you to see or do differently to get into alignment. Now, part of the problem is people don't want to change. And so they don't want to go to coaching or counseling because they don't want somebody to tell them that they need to do things differently. But again, remember, I used to tell you how my uncle said, do you want to be right or do you want to be happy? Because many times you can't be both at the same time. So if happiness and peace and all of those things are what you truly desire in the relationship, then you might have to give a little bit, and you might have to go and just get somebody to help move you in the right direction. There's no shame in that game at all. So again, there's not like there's anyone out there doing it wrong. Not trying to point fingers at anyone. I'm not saying that trying to help your partner be their best self is wrong, but I am saying don't make them a project, and help them become their best self based on what they want to do. So get behind them and support them with their goals, as opposed to trying to make them reach your goals. So we talked about that. Make sure that they're a partner, someone that you love and you choose every single day. Every day you have to choose. You're making a choice. When you wake up with that individual, you are either choosing to be there and be engaged 100%, or you're choosing not to be. The choice is up to you, but make that choice and let them know I'm choosing you. Not like I'm here because I choose to be here kind of an attitude, but let them know I'm choosing you. You have value and I'm choosing you. So we need to make sure that we're loving our partners, helping them become the best selves that they want to be, as opposed to making them projects and trying to turn them into something or someone that we wish they were. And I gave you some help with how do you do that with intentionality? How do you show them love and respect and appreciation, make them feel seen and heard and appreciated? Those are all things that we need to do in both directions, whether you're talking about a man to a woman or a woman to a man. And as I said before, no offense or disrespect if you're in the same sex relationship. I focus on male female relationships. And so my examples, my words will be on that basis, but it doesn't mean that you can't take some of what I'm saying and apply it to your situation as well. So if we turn people into projects, we shouldn't be surprised when they go searching for peace. But no matter where you go, real love will always require growth, not escape. And true partnership begins when both people choose to show up, choose one another, be themselves, and not try to fix each other. So hopefully something that I said tonight sparked a little interest. Maybe it gave you an idea, something that you can do differently. But we definitely want you to tune in, give us some insight, help us with these relationship conversations. And so before I leave you, got my reminders for you. Check out Soul Take. That's Pittsburgh's exciting sports talk show. Comes on every Tuesday from 6 to 8 p.m. And the fellas get together and they're going to talk about Steelers rookies, kicker Chris Boswell getting a new deal, why the Steelers continue to wait on quarterback Aaron Rodgers and the NFL schedule that's coming out this week. Those are all part of the topics. They're going to talk about PGA Championship, NBA playoffs, Pittsburgh Pirates, Pitt basketball and football, and so much more. So that's a conversation you want to be in on. Also, for those of you who like to travel, take a cruise in the Eastern Caribbean with Pittsburgh's DSCN, November 7th to the 14th. You can go to the website for more details. And last but not least, tune into our radio stream or pghdscn.com for the best of soulful music. That will be on after my show until midnight. And please subscribe. You know, please subscribe, particularly if you're listening on YouTube. It's free. We'll keep you updated on all of our 24/7 programming. Subscribe on, the website, follow us. Soulful music, Pittsburgh sports talk, and lifestyle programming. You'll get all of the updates on all of that right here on Pittsburgh's DSEN, the place for soul. So as I leave you as always, reminding you to keep learning, keep growing, keep loving. One love.
You've been listening to Relationship Conversations with Dr. Linda Bing. Continue to listen to Pittsburgh's DSEN. We're on 24/7. See our radio schedule for programming details, and please remember to subscribe to receive updated information.